The nurse was still adjusting my IV when my phone buzzed on the tray table. I figured it was my husband. It wasn't. It was my mother. I answered because I always answer. That's the thing about me. Even flat on my back in a hospital bed with a gown that didn't close properly in the back, and a headache that made the fluorescent lights feel like punishment, I still answered for her. Mara. She said my name the way she always does, slightly clipped, like she's correcting something. Your sister called me. She said you were in some kind of accident. A car accident, I said. I'm at Mercy General. They're keeping me overnight for observation. There was something on the... How bad? Bad enough that I'm here. I have a concussion maybe. They did a CT scan and there was something they wanted to look at again. They're not sure yet. There was a pause, not a short one. Long enough that I pulled the phone away to check if the call had dropped. Okay, she said. Here's the thing. I have heard those 4 words from my mother my entire life. Here's the thing. It always means the same thing. It means, what I'm about to say is going to sound bad, but I need you to understand my side of it. Your brother is having a really rough night, she said. He got some news today, about the house. My brother had been trying to refinance for 3 months. I knew this because my mother had been keeping me updated on it with the same regularity and detail she used to reserve for my actual life events. What kind of news? They denied him. And then he got a late fee on top of it. He's really spiraling, Mara. He called me crying. I haven't heard him cry since he was 17. I was lying in a hospital bed. I had been in a car accident less than 2 hours ago. A 22-year-old in a pickup truck had run a red light on Garfield Avenue and T-boned me on the driver's side. I had climbed out of the wreck with my left arm bleeding and my vision doing something I didn't have a word for, and a woman named Patrice, who I had never met before that moment, had held my hand on the curb until the ambulance came. Mom, I said. I'm in the hospital. I know, honey. I know. But your father and I are over at you brothers right now. He needed us tonight. You know how he gets. I did know how he got. My brother had been getting that way for 34 years. He got that way when things were hard, which was often, and when things were fine, which was often, and when things were fine, which was also sometimes. He got that way, and my parents drove 40 minutes to sit with him on his couch, and I had watched this happen so many times that I had genuinely stopped counting. There's something on my CT scan, I said. I kept my voice steady. I had learned a long time ago that if I cried, the conversation shifted to managing their discomfort. The doctor said she wants to look at it again. Another pause. What does that mean? It means they don't know yet. It could be nothing. It could be something. They're going to run another one in the morning. I heard my mother breathe out. Then I heard her say something to my father, too low for me to make out. Then she came back. Listen, she said. Your brother really needs us right now. But if it turns out to be something serious, like actually serious, call us and we'll come. Okay? We'll come right away. But tonight I think you're probably fine. You're already there, you have the doctors with you. There's nothing we could do. I want to tell you that I said something then. Something clear and measured. Something I had been building toward for years without knowing it. But I didn't. I said okay. I said I'd call if anything changed. I said good night. Then I put the phone down and looked at the ceiling. The ceiling at Mercy General is white with those foam tiles they use everywhere. Offices, schools, hospitals. I had stared at a ceiling like that in the 8th grade when I broke my wrist at gymnastics practice, and my mother had sat in the plastic chair next to the bed and rubbed my ankle for 2 hours while we waited for the doctor. I remember thinking she smelled like the vanilla lotion she kept on the kitchen counter. I remember feeling so specific and total in my safety. I thought about that for a while. Then I called my husband. He picked up on the second ring. He was in Denver. He had flown out that morning for a 3-day conference. Something about environmental compliance, which was his whole job. The kind of work that is incredibly important and incredibly hard to explain at dinner parties. He had kissed me goodbye at 5:15 in the morning in the dark of our hallway and said, "I'll text you when I land," and I had gone back to sleep for another hour before my own work day started. "Hey," he said. "How's your?" And then he heard something in my voice, I think, because he stopped. "What's wrong?" I told him. I told him all of it. The truck, the red light, Patrice on the curb, the ambulance, the CT scan, the thing they wanted to look at again. I told him in the same flat, careful voice I had used with my mother. Because by then, it was the only register I had left. When I finished, he was quiet for 3 seconds. I counted. "Okay," he said. "I'm booking a flight. You have the conference. Mara, it might be nothing. They said it might be nothing. I know what they said. I'm booking a flight." I heard him moving around. A door, the sound of a zipper. "There's one at 6:15 tomorrow morning that gets in at 11. I'm getting on it. You don't have to. I want to. Stop." He has a way of saying stop that is not harsh, it's just absolute. A door being gently but completely closed. "Okay," I said. "Is there anyone who can come tonight to be with you?" I thought about my mother. I thought about my brother's late fee and his refinancing denial, and the 40-minute drive my parents had already made to sit on his couch. "I'll call my friend Danny," I said. He stayed on the phone with me for another 20 minutes. He talked me through the hospital menu, which I wasn't hungry for, and he asked me questions about the room and the nurses and whether I had the charger I kept in my bag. He made me check. It was there. He said good, like it was the most important thing he'd heard all day. After we hung up, I texted my friend Danny. She was there in 45 minutes with a tote bag that had a blanket, a bag of goldfish crackers, and a phone charger that was not the right model but that she had grabbed anyway just in case. She sat in the plastic chair and talked to me about nothing useful and everything necessary, until I finally fell asleep around midnight. My parents arrived the next morning at 11:45. My husband's flight landed at 11:02. He was in an Uber by 11:15. He walked through the door of my room at 11:30, with his carry-on still on his shoulder and his jacket wrinkled from sleeping on it, and he sat on the edge of my bed and put his hand on my face and looked at me for a long time without saying anything. My parents came 15 minutes later. My father stopped in the doorway when he saw my husband sitting there. My mother came in behind him and stopped too. "You flew back," my father said. He wasn't talking to me. "Of course," my husband said. I watched my father's face do something complicated. He looked at my husband. He looked at me. He looked at the chair that Danny had sat in all night, which was still pulled close to the bed. "We were going to come last night," my father said. "But your mother thought." "It's fine," I said. I said it before I could think about it. It's what I always say. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I have been saying it my entire life like a reflex, like a nervous tick, like a word I learned before I understood what any of them meant. "It's not fine," my husband said. He said it quietly. He wasn't looking at my parents when he said it. He was looking at me. The room was very quiet for a moment. My mother set the Dunkin' bag she brought on the counter by the sink. Coffee and a muffin. She'd gotten me a corn muffin, which I haven't eaten since I was 12 because I don't like corn muffins, a fact that has been true for 20 years. The doctor said it wasn't serious. My mother said. The second scan was clear, so it worked out. "The second scan was this morning," I said. I didn't know last night that it was going to be clear. But it was. I looked at her. She had her purse on her arm still, like she wasn't sure how long this was going to take. She was wearing the blue cardigan she always wore, the one with the little buttons, and her hair was done, which meant she had taken the time to do her hair this morning before coming, which meant this was not an emergency to her. It had never been an emergency to her. I thought about all the times I had made it to my brother's emergencies. I drove 2 hours to help him move out of his ex-girlfriend's apartment at 11 at night. I loaned him money. I won't say how much, but it was more than I would have given a stranger, which at that point in our relationship felt like an important distinction. I sat in a hospital waiting room for 6 hours when he had his appendix out. Not because anyone asked me to, but because he was my brother and you show up for people. That's what I believed. That is genuinely, sincerely what I had believed my whole life. I looked at my father. He had moved further into the room by now and was standing with his hands in his pockets the way he does when he's uncomfortable. Weight shifted to his right foot. "How's he doing?" I asked. "My brother. How's he doing this morning?" My mother's expression shifted. Something careful came into it. "Better," she said. "He talked to the bank again this morning. There might be some options." I nodded. "That's good," I said. And I meant it. I actually meant it. That's the part that I think is hardest to explain to people who haven't grown up in a family like mine. I wasn't angry at my brother. My brother didn't call my parents away from my bedside. My brother didn't even know, probably, that I was in the hospital. My anger, if I can even call it that, it was quieter than anger, more like something slowly draining. My anger was not about him. It was about the fact that for my entire life, there had been a scale in my family, and I had watched things get placed on it over and over, and I had watched which way it tipped. And I had told myself stories about why that was. He struggles more than I do. I'm more capable. They don't worry about me because they trust me. And those stories had worked for a long time because I needed them to. I didn't need them anymore. The second CT scan had come back clear at 7 that morning. The doctor, a woman named Dr. O.C., who had the kind of calm you want from someone reading your brain scans, had sat on the edge of the bed and explained that what they'd seen initially was likely an artifact. Something in the imaging. Nothing structural. She said to follow up with my regular doctor in a week. She said to take it easy. She said I was lucky. I thought about Patrice on the curb. I thought about my husband's carry-on bag still on his shoulder. I thought about Danny's wrong model phone charger. I thought about my parents and the corn muffin. Lucky, I thought. Yes. Specific and specific and specific about what kind. My husband asked my parents if they wanted coffee, and my mother said yes, and my father said sure, and my husband left to find the family lounge, and it was just the three of us then, for the first time. My mother sat down in the chair Danny had sat in. She smoothed her slacks. "We were worried," she said. "I know. It's not like we didn't care." I looked at her. She was looking at the window, not at me. There was a parking garage outside. We both looked at it for a moment. "I know you care," I said. "And I meant that too, the way you mean something that is true and also insufficient. Caring is not the same as showing up. Caring is not the same as being there." I had learned that, and I couldn't unlearn it. And sitting in that hospital bed in a gown that still didn't close properly in the back, I was done pretending I hadn't. "When I was in the ambulance," I said, "I called you before I called anyone else." My mother turned to look at me then. "I know," she said. "I want you to think about that." She didn't say anything. "I'm not saying that to make you feel bad," I said. "I'm saying it because I want you to understand something. When it mattered most, when I didn't know yet if I was okay, you were the first person I thought to call, and I need you to sit with what happened after that." My father came back in at that point before she could answer. My husband came back 30 seconds later with 4 coffees in a cardboard carrier and the specific competence of a man who has handled logistics his entire life. He handed them out. He pulled up a chair. He sat down next to my bed, on the side where the rail was down, and he put his hand over mine on top of the blanket, and he just stayed there. We all talked for a while about normal things. The drive over, the weather, My brother's refinancing options. My mother mentioned a neighbor whose dog had been sick. My father mentioned a road closure on I-94. It was the conversation of people in the same room who are not quite in the same room. They left around 1. When the door closed, I was quiet for a minute. My husband didn't say anything. He poured me what was left of the good coffee, the one my mother had gotten from Dunkin', not the hospital stuff, and set it on the tray where I could reach it. "You okay?" he said. "I'm figuring something out," I said. "Take your time." That's the thing about him. He has never once told me what to figure out or how fast to do it. He has never told me my family is bad or suggested I cut anyone off or implied that I owe any particular response to any particular situation. He has only ever shown up. And then waited, and then been there while I work out what I think. I don't know how to explain what that does to a person who grew up in a house where love felt like a thing you applied for and sometimes got and sometimes didn't, depending on who else was applying. I was discharged at 3:15. My husband drove me home in my car, which he had arranged to have moved from the impound lot that morning through a service he'd found while I was asleep. This is the kind of thing he does. Competent, quiet, unannounced. He had also texted my boss with my permission to let her know I'd be out for the rest of the week. He had checked on our cat, who had been fed by our neighbor in a trade for the occasional use of our driveway. He had somehow, in the middle of all of this, ordered groceries to arrive Thursday because he knew I wouldn't feel like going out. On the drive home, I watched the city go past, and I thought about my brother and his phone call to our parents, and I genuinely, truly hoped his refinancing worked out. I hoped the bank found him an option. I hoped he was okay. And I also knew, for maybe the first time with real clarity, that hope and proximity are not the same thing. That I could love him without organizing my emergencies around his comfort. That I could love my parents without making their limitations into my failures. A few days later, when I was home and feeling more like myself, my mother called. She asked how I was feeling. I said better. She said she'd been thinking about what I said at the hospital. I said I was glad. She didn't apologize exactly, but she said something, how she knew she didn't always get it right, and that she did love me, and that she wished things had been different that night. It wasn't everything. It wasn't a long conversation. But it was something true in it, and I've learned not to dismiss true things just because they come late or come small. I told her I loved her. I meant it. I also meant the other things. Both can be real. That's what I know now. That two things can be real at the same time, and you don't have to choose between them. You can love someone and also be clear about what they've shown you. You can forgive something and also not forget the shape of it. My arm healed. The headaches got better. The follow-up with my regular doctor was uneventful in the best possible way. My brother's refinancing went through eventually. He texted me about it. I texted back a thumbs up and then a house emoji. Because that felt right. My husband went back to Denver 2 weeks later for the rest of the conference he'd cut short. Before he left, he made me coffee and set it on the counter and kissed me on the top of the head and said he'd text when he landed. He did. He always does. That's the thing about people who show up. They keep showing up, even when the emergency is over, even when there's nothing dramatic left to witness. They show up for the ordinary Tuesday. They show up for the wrong model phone charger. They show up for the carry-on still on the shoulder, the coffee in the cardboard carrier, the groceries arriving Thursday. They show up and they stay, and after a while you stop being surprised by it, and that is its own kind of healing. The slow, specific, unglamorous kind that nobody makes videos about, but that matters more than almost anything else I know. I don't know what I expected from that night. I don't know what version of my parents I was hoping for when I pressed call from the back of that ambulance. Maybe I knew, somewhere I wasn't looking at yet, exactly what I was going to get. But I also know this. I found out who gets the 6 a.m. flight. And once you know that, you can't unknow it. You carry it with you differently than you carried everything before. Not as a wound exactly, more like a compass. Something that shows you which way is true north, even when the weather makes it hard to see. I know where my north is. That's what the accident gave me in the end. More than a clear scan, more than a healed arm, more than anything the doctors could have told me in that hospital room. It gave me the thing I'd been circling my whole life without a name for it. Now I have the name. Now I know where to stand. I've been thinking about cause and effect a lot since that night. Not in a dramatic way, just in the way you do when something breaks open quietly and you can finally see what was inside. What I know now is that nothing about what happened was random. My parents didn't fail to show up because of traffic or bad timing or a genuine emergency. They didn't show up because of a pattern that had been building for decades, one small tilt of the scale at a time, until the tilt became the default. That kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. It accumulates. And what accumulates eventually becomes visible, sometimes at the worst possible moment, sometimes in a hospital room under fluorescent lights with a corn muffin on the counter that nobody asked for. That's the cause and effect I mean, not punishment, not the universe evening some cosmic score, just consequence, the natural and inevitable consequence of what you practice. My parents had practiced for years, treating my steadiness as permission to redirect their attention elsewhere. And I had practiced for years, saying it's fine when it wasn't. We were all getting exactly what we had trained for. The hard part of that realization isn't anger. The hard part is the accountability in it. Because I was part of the pattern too. I said it's fine when I should have said it's not. I absorbed the imbalance and called it strength when a lot of it was just avoidance. Avoiding the conversation. Avoiding the look on my mother's face. Avoiding the particular discomfort of saying out loud, "I needed you and you chose not to come." There's a kind of intelligence that only gets built through discomfort, not the intelligence of knowing facts or solving problems, the other kind. The kind that knows which things you've been lying to yourself about. The kind that can sit in a hospital bed at midnight and finally, quietly, stop pretending. I think that's what that night asked of me. And I think for the first time, I was ready to answer honestly. Danny showed up with the wrong phone charger. My husband got on a 6 a.m. flight. Dr. Miliau, OC, sat on the edge of my bed and explained my scan results in plain language that didn't leave room for fear. And Patrice, a stranger on a curb, held my hand until help came. None of them owed me that. Every single one of them did it anyway. That's the other side of cause and effect. You get what you give, yes, but you also find what you look for. And what I found, in the worst night I'd had in years, was that I was surrounded by people who showed up. Not because it was convenient, not because I had earned it in some transaction, but because that's simply who they were. Reliable, present, real. I think that's what resilience actually looks like. Not toughness. Not the ability to take hit after hit without flinching. Just clarity. The willingness to see things as they are and keep going anyway. To love your parents and also name what they did. To forgive something and still let it change you. To stop saying it's fine and start building a life that actually is. I'm still building it. Some days it's harder than others. But I know now what I'm building toward, and I know who I want in the room while I do it. That's enough. That's more than enough.